Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our regular council meeting for Monday, December the 13th, 2021. Call the meeting to order, and we will begin with the playing of the national anthem. We would also like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. Just a reminder to members that any disclosures of pecuniary interest can be made now or throughout the meeting as the matter arises, and those disclosures must be made verbally and in writing to be filed with the clerk. Can I have a motion to approve the November 22nd Committee of Adjustment and regular council meeting minutes, and the minutes as well from the November 29th special council meeting? Moved by Bernardo, seconded by Hall. Any discussion on any of those minutes? All in favor? It's carried. Madam Clerk, were there any questions submitted?
No questions this evening.
Okay. So for presentations, we have the draft 2022 budget presentation from the treasurer. So, Carrie, are you going to share your screen? Or, okay.
Yes. Did you want me to do that now?
Sure.
Or, okay, I wasn't sure what was happening first. Okay, so. Okay, just a thumbs up if everyone can see the full presentation. Okay, thank you. So through your worship, and good evening, members of council. Every year's budget presentation is an important one, but this one is especially important for two reasons. It's the fourth and last budget that this term of council will adopt. And it's also the last opportunity that this term of council will have to support council's strategic priorities as set by yourselves back in your first term of office. So while it is unfortunate that this budget may seem unrealistic with respect to the suggested increase, staff have built the 2022 budget and the presentation with a bright and positive outlook that its adoption will support council's vision of being a community that is engaged, connected, and innovative. This year's presentation mirrors similar presentations that you've seen in prior years. and you've become accustomed to this high-level overview. So with council's indulgence, we will carry on and take questions at the end of the presentation. The 2022 budget schedule was set late last summer and was modified slightly this year to accommodate the consultant presentations of the service delivery review, the Grace Tippling Hall revitalization project, as well as the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which focused mostly on the Fiddle Park at this point. Last year at this time, the 2021 budget had already been adopted and the bylaw was passed and we were completely finished. And here we are tonight, just getting started. Leading up to tonight's meeting, council heard a budget framework report on November the 29th. And for the benefit of anyone else that may be listening, staff have been collecting data for many months leading up to tonight's meeting in conjunction with drafting a long-term financial plan. And following the Christmas break, we will present a public presentation on January the 10th, and then the adoption and passing of the bylaw will follow after that. So a balanced municipal budget is a requirement under the Municipal Act, and that is why we still work on a cash basis for the purposes of setting a tax rate and a tax levy. So for 2022, the annual expenses less the annual revenues provides the amount of dollars that need to be raised by taxation. And the budget before you tonight represents just over $8.8 million. On November the 29th, staff presented council with a budget framework report outlining certain features that would be proposed in the draft 2022 budget. A significant portion of the changes that were identified in that framework report were due to the recent service delivery review that was conducted and identified four main themes, which have been identified on this slide, which are the increasing resident expectations, the desire for more recreational amenities, increased response times to complaints. And because of resident expectations, this requires increased staff resources in order to meet those demands because the service needs are outpacing the staff complement that exists today. Something else that was pointed out was the need to realign organizational structure with emerging priorities. And this means the realignment of existing staff, adding new staff, staff retainment and succession planning are also going to be reviewed in 2022, as well as the possible separation of some departments, for example, operations and parks and recreation. It also included the expanded use of data to make informed decisions, and that will be further identified through improved online services, establishing performance levels and key performance indicators, as well as if we are successful in obtaining the grant, we will also do a further parks and operations review. So at the 2022 budget framework meeting, council was kind enough to pass the motion that was recommended and contained in the staff report. And this was the intent of staff in order that the budget before you tonight could be presented as originally prepared so that council could see the full details of the figures behind the proposed increase. And the motion that was adopted allowed for staff to bring forward a budget with a tax levy not to exceed 13%, to include the $100,000 for arts and culture, which was a motion from the Arts and Culture Committee, to include new support staff and staff realignments, representing approximately 5.09% levy increase, and to utilize $200,000 from the tax stabilization reserve, but not to become dependent on that funding source is something that we need to keep in mind. I'm making a department over department revenue comparison over 2021. While the chart shows an overall increase of 14.41%, The actual amount to be raised by taxation or the levy is 13.43%. And the difference comes with increased transfers from reserves. And you will notice that the majority, now I can't see my explanation on my screen, but you will notice the explanation column does indicate that the increased revenue is coming from reserves. And that was indicated in the budget framework report, that we will see a large decrease in our reserves in order to fund this budget. Some other own source revenue that is still suffering because of the lingering effects of the economy and due to the pandemic are such items as provincial offenses revenue, bank interest, and facility and field rentals are still down. Staff continue to source grant funding opportunities whenever available, and we did list quite a few of those grants in the budget framework report. But sadly, many of the projects that are identified in the budget with that revenue source will not be carried out unless those applications are successful. In keeping with a balanced budget, the expenditures before you also represent a 14.41% increase. And as identified in the budget framework report, the town is facing significant financial pressures and increased expenses in order to respond to the service and amenity expectations and needs for the small town as we continue to experience significant growth. Coupled with unavoidable cost drivers that are external, tied to inflation, legislation, assessment, and the ongoing pandemic, it serves to leave little budget room in order to achieve what is expected. More specifically, this budget does include insurance premium increases, fuel and utility increases, CPI and inflation increases that are tied to existing contracts that the town has, as well as vehicle and equipment purchasing costs. You will notice from the explanation column that the majority of the increases in costs can be attributed to new staff realignments, weekend and evening coverage, which are attributed to growth. And these were outlined in detail for council on page 6 of the budget framework report. And the future implementation of projects and other recommended enhanced services are dependent on acquiring staffing resources needed to carry them out. And the existing workloads of current staff throughout all departments who have taken on a greater volume of work in an attempt to keep up with the growing pressures is simply not sustainable. In addition, the 2022 budget includes completing a municipal related market review of existing and any new positions to ensure that the town remains competitive. The recruitment process, attracting and retaining qualified staff, as well as succession planning, are also being reviewed. All of this supports the service delivery review theme of aligning organizational structure with emerging priorities. And we will go through these expenditures in more detail, I'm sure, once we get into budget discussions. On a positive note, because the town is still experiencing some growth, and even though the phased-in assessment did not occur and will not occur in 2023 again, the town did experience 5.3% in taxable assessment growth, which has occurred and allowed for a lower tax rate than would have been required should the growth not have occurred at all. So what this means, based on a single average home assessed at $335,366, would be an additional $199 per year, which equates to $16.58 per month, or a tax rate increase of 8%. And as previously mentioned, the levy increase for the budget itself is 13%. And staff are recommending that council take advantage of the additional growth in assessment while it is still available. This chart was also shown to you on November 29th, and it outlines some other examples of other dwellings throughout town with varying aging neighborhoods and styles, single homes, townhouses, etc. Included in the service delivery review, and then again in the budget framework report, is the current and proposed staffing additions and proposed changes. This chart does not include any staff that is employed through the arena, the library, or the fire department. And how these wages and salaries make up the budget. These percentages show you what it takes to, in staffing resources, to run each department. You will notice there's still a percentage there for police, and council is already aware that of the funding arrangement that was made at the time of the severance disbandment costs. And in order to avoid short-term borrowing, it was spread over a 3-year span, utilizing existing policing reserves as well as the emergency accommodation levy to make those costs. So splitting where your tax dollar goes, this slide shows how $1 of taxpayers' money is spent on each department. My computer's telling me my internet connection is unstable. Am I still coming through clear?
You're okay right now. It was a little muffled there for a minute.
Okay. So other protective services includes bylaw enforcement, crossing guards, and conservation. Public works includes cemetery, waste management, and storm sewers. Planning and development includes the BIA levy as well as the EDC budget. The recreation and culture includes the town's share of the CDRC and the library, as well as heritage, local cultural grants, the Fiddle Park, and town events. The police services is still on the top of the list there. And just one thing to note with respect to that is that the OPP contract in the 2021 budget was only for 10 months. And in the 2022 budget, it is for 12. So that helps explain part of that reason. So for general capital projects, we do have $2.7 million in infrastructure, road, and equipment and capital purchases. And that includes projects that are dependent on our OCIF funding and our Connecting Link grant, as well as we have a purchase of a pickup truck with the blade and sander, a plow truck. We've included audible pedestrian crossings at the 2 crossings that are still lacking that feature, Greenwood and Main and on Sound Street. For Parks and Recreation, we have $1.1 million budgeted, and that includes our long anticipated splash pad, as well as the tennis and pickleball court, the off-leash dog park, Jack Downing Park revitalization, some playground equipment purchases, as well as some fencing and parks and recreation equipment for mowing the grass. We also have $200,000 set aside for some municipal drain work that needs done, as well as some housekeeping, safety, health and safety issues at Town Hall. And then we are also applying for a grant through the ECDEV committee for some downtown beautification. So for general capital, the main goal is to provide worthy projects that have already been identified as shovel ready, and they are therefore majorly funded through the buildup of reserves, donations, development charges, and any grants that are available at the time. You will notice that the capital projects identified for 2022, only 5% is being funded from the tax base, or approximately $195,000. Next, we have our separate budgets of the water and sewer operating and capital. In accordance with the water rate study that was done in 2017 and then updated again in 2020. Before you are the proposed increases for the rates in accordance with the bylaw. And because of the increase in households that we are experiencing through the residential developments it amounts to a 10% increase in our sewer revenues, as well as a 7% increase in our water revenues. Those are not the percentages by which the water and sewer are going up. If you compare the base rates and the metered rates year over year, the 7 and the 10 is as high as it is because of the increased households, not because of the amount that the rates are changing. One thing to take into consideration too is with our Aqua contract, it is one of the contracts that we mentioned that is tied to inflation. So we have experienced a 4.4% increase with that contract for this year. Of one interest, and I know you can't see it from the screen, but within the operating documents, you will notice that there are annual budgeted transfers to the capital reserve. And this is intentional, and this is why the rates are set as such. And that is so that money can be set aside for the significant capital projects that you're all aware of with respect to the water tower, well 3, as well as the sewage treatment plant. And when you see the 5-year capital plan, you will see how important and essential it is to build those reserves now for those projects that are coming down within the next 5 years. And for our water capital projects, we have already dedicated $2 million in sewer reserves to the design phase of the water pollution control plant. We've also awarded the contract for the build of the secondary water storage tower. And we have gone out for RFP for the well 3. We have not awarded that contract yet. And we have also applied for a grant through the ICIP Green Stream for well 3. If we're not successful in getting that grant, we will have to borrow. And this shows our funding sources for the water and sewer capital projects. And long-term debt is identified as 36%, which is the majority of that is the water tower. However, we do show a 20% grant here for well 3. If we do not receive that grant, then our long-term debt percentage would increase accordingly. And you will notice that reserves are funding 16% of both water and sewer capital projects for 2022. And the 10% indicated for the water DCs, the majority of that is the new water tower, because only a very small portion of the well 3 arsenic project is DC eligible. And this is the annual chart that you are all used to seeing as well. The only difference this year is we've added the water storage tower for $5 million, which we have been successful in acquiring that grant through Infrastructure Ontario. The amounts here for the principal and interest payments are estimates because we have not actually debentured that loan yet. So until we do, the set interest rate has not been assigned. It is generally prudent to ensure that your reserve balances are at least equal to your debt. And you will see that our 2022 ending debt balance is approximately $8.3 million, just over $8.3 million now that we've added the water storage project. And the reserve estimates are sitting at just slightly under 8 million. And as we had noted in the budget framework report, there is a rather large reduction in reserves to accommodate this budget. And this chart has slightly changed from the November 29th presentation. And the reason for that is we've realigned some revenue that we've recognized for lot fees from the residential portion of the Fieldgate development, which actually came in recently between the November 29th meeting and now. So we've bumped up that revenue source that we did not anticipate receiving so soon. And because of that, we were able to actually lower the amount of money that we need to borrow from the tax stabilization reserve. So as we had originally had the motion of council to borrow 200,000 from it, we were actually able to drop it to 143,350 from the framework report. So staff have already indicated that 2023 is shaping up to be have similar financial demands as 2022. And we may need to use that tax stabilization reserve for another year as well. Another change that has taken place, and it came, it was rationalized by staff while working on the long-term capital plan, was that we had budgeted to set aside some reserve money this year for a potential snowplow purchase that may not physically take place till 2023. So I had originally shown that the reserves would still be here at the end of 2022. We have since decided to show that they will not be here because we want to identify those reserves as already having been spoken for, just in case the truck does show up in 2022. If once we go to RFP, remains to be seen when we will actually take delivery of that vehicle. So I thought it was kind of a cleaner picture to show that even though we may not pay for that truck until 2023, the reserves are gone and spoken for that purchase. So that's one change. If you were to pull up your spreadsheet from the November budget report or framework report, that would explain the differences for you. And then part of council's strategic priorities that were adopted in 2019 was for the a long-term financial plan. So what staff have prepared for you tonight, which I will present following this budget report, is a 5-year capital plan, and it aligns with one of the council's sustainable goals. And it helps to change it provides a bigger picture and changes decision-making from short-term to the long-term. And it depicts how saving for the future allows for priority setting and promotes a tax rate stability. That is the end of this report. Do you want me to go right into the 5-year capital plan?
I was actually thinking that, Carrie. Yeah, I mean, on the agenda, we have that after the council's budget discussion period, but I think it may make more sense just to do that now, and then we have both presentations kind of under the belt, but before we get into those discussions, if you're okay with that.
Sure. So I'm going to try sharing my screen again. I didn't do a formal slide deck for the capital plan, but I am going to share the summary sheet.
We don't have an actual copy of that, do we?
Yes, it was in the agenda package.
In the agenda itself, yeah, I know.
So this is just a summary of the 5 years within each of the departments, including each service area, including debt. So just as a bit of background, in 2019, council had adopted a set of strategic priorities. And one of them was under the goal of sustainable was to develop a financial plan with a key performance indicator of completing and adopting a long-term financial plan. So financial plans can vary in length. They anywhere from five years, 10 years, some even go out as far as 20. They should be at least 5 and updated annually. So staff have provided you with the next 5 years. Capital plans don't always just include tangible items. They also include studies and front-ending engineering designs that lead up to the actual tangible capital asset. And they align with the asset management plans of the municipality, and also take into consideration, development charge studies, roads needs studies, master plans, transportation studies, etc. So what staff have done is we've taken our asset management plan, and we've also taken our citywide data listing, and staff have gone through and rated equipment and vehicles and such on condition ratings rather than just age-based. And we've thought where we believe that those pieces of equipment may need replaced. And as things go on, sometimes those need swapped out. Like if something, breaks down sooner than another, even though the age depicts that it may need to be replaced in a certain year, another machine may bump that one. And a good example of how things get moved around is for 2021. I've included that in this report just to show council. Now, if I change this page, does this move? Do you guys see?
Yeah.
Okay. So for 2021, we had a list of projects. Some of them included purchases of specific pieces of equipment. Some of them included infrastructure, and they totaled just over $9.2 million. But in reality, what actually happened was projects that totaled $3 million. So I wanted to show you why a capital plan needs to be reviewed annually, because of all the external factors that change that we have no control over, that end up depicting what your year is going to end up looking like. So for 2022, we have identified everything that's on this list is also identified within the budget document, and it also provides funding sources. The further that a capital plan goes out, the higher the probability of change occurs, as well as a higher level of uncertainty. And it's not uncommon to see a 10-year capital plan where only the first 5 years provide a funding source, and the latter 5 don't. And part of that reason, especially for municipal purposes, is things like our studies. Our water rate studies are generally for 5 years. Our DC studies are for 5 years, and our roads needs study are for 5 years. So that is actually why staff, as we looked out into the years beyond 2026, we just decided that we were going to cut it off at a 5-year capital plan for now, until some of this growth settles down that has become one of the things that has made our budgeting difficult. And if even looking back at 2021, what we had in for the water tower and for well 3 arsenic totaled in 2021 totaled 3.7 million. And then here we are in 2022 with the same projects identified for 8.1 million. And so that's just one example of how fluid things change. Something to note in 2022 is we do have identified $1.1 million in recreation and culture, which I previously mentioned was all the outdoor amenities. And the majority of those projects are covered by development charges. And you'll see that in 2022, we only have $194,000 being collected through the tax levy. And otherwise, the funding sources make up water reserves, development charges, and grants or donations. And then, of course, long-term borrowing. In 2023, we've identified some projects that were listed in the DC study. So those projects are DC eligible, and by the time these projects come come to fruition. It would be hoped that we have collected those DC funds. But that's the other problem with relying on development charges to fund your projects is, what if your development doesn't happen? Or what if it doesn't happen as soon as you anticipated that it would happen? So then all of a sudden that revenue source is no longer there for you to acquire those funds from. In 2023, we've also identified the, as mentioned in the service delivery review, and we've more or less put it in as a placeholder. We have not identified a dollar value for it, is the potential changes regarding the 2 third-party boards. So with the consultation process that we've been going through with the municipalities and the town service delivery review, we've projected the disbandment of the CDRC board in 2023, and then the fire board the following year in 2024. And again, no estimate dollar value has been assigned to either of those services. And it is just a placeholder for council to have it on your radar as a future cost. And then also in 2023, we have identified the two-bay addition at the works yard. And that is because in 2024, we are budgeting to purchase an additional plow truck. So new, in addition to the existing fleet, as well as another pickup truck, which would be shared with Parks and Recreation. So the 2-bay addition would be required in order to house those additional vehicles. So the actual construction for the works yard is budgeted for 2023. And then the equipment purchases in 2024. And we have also identified, as you go further out, beyond 2026, the DC study did again mention another addition to the public works yard in 2028. And that would be due to growth as well. In 2023 and 2024, we've also identified some space planning capital costs, which will be as a result of the staff growth. Once we acquire some of the staff that we have projected that is needed, we do have a place for all of those bodies to land in the office currently. But at some point, we will need to do some space planning within town hall, because we have not determined what will be done yet with the police side of the building. And some of those accommodation needs were also discussed through the Grace Tippling Hall revitalization, and things that could be utilized upstairs that formerly existed on the police side with respect to arts and culture and the Grace Tippling Hall. So we've forecasted those for 2023 and then again in 2024. We do have in 2023, the 4 gateway entrance signs is another big purchase. As we're hoping by the end of 2023, we've got the majority of those outlying subdivisions that are currently under construction will be done, and we'll be able to put up the new gateway signs. In 2024, some of the major things that we've identified, again, I already mentioned, was the new plow truck and pickup truck, along with replacement of some other miscellaneous equipment for operations and Parks and Recreation. We've also identified the waste pollution control plant upgrades. We've indicated that by 2024, the design work should be done. We should be ready to go to RFP for this project and start phasing in those upgrades. We have identified them at $12 million for each of the following 3 years for 2024, 25, and 26. And we do show some of that funding coming from reserves and development charges, but on the downside, we are anticipating that we would have to borrow at least $8 million for 3 consecutive years, starting in 2024. And in 2026, 2 of our loans do come off, one of them being the Sister Street loans, and one of them being the sewage treatment plant phase 2. Those loans would come off in 2026, which would open up some borrowing capability. They were $1.7 million loans each. So that would open up a little bit of borrowing capacity for us. It would still exceed our 40% maximum. So we would still have to amend our debt policy. But there is, through Infrastructure Ontario, there are capital line loan facility loans for 5-year terms where we could apply and work on the project for 5 years and debenture at the end of that 5-year term. So whether or not we would be eligible for that remains to be seen, but that is something that we are looking into. And then there is also the possibility of, as our planner has mentioned in previous meetings, front-ending agreements to help us pay for that treatment plant. So 2025 is also the first year that we will experience a decrease in cost in our policing contract. So in 2025, we've actually utilized those savings and put them towards some of the urbanization of some of the streets in town that we have been identifying in our capital infrastructure budget for many years. It's been a footnote that we've been carrying forward. And by 2025, we should be able to fund those projects. And 2 of them, one of them is the urbanization of Pine Grove. And then in 2026, we identify the Centennial and Industrial Road realignments, which would correspond with some of the development that's going on with the Fieldgate subdivision and aligning with some of those streets over there, and also takes into account the traffic master plan. And our planner has a report coming in the new year with respect to sidewalks and the county road and the new development. So part of all of that is all lumped in together with some of those urbanization projects. And funding for those, you will notice the majority of that is coming from the tax levy. And we are also relying on any infrastructure grants that may be available come that time. So if we go back to the first page, this shows you that over the next 5 years, and this is not including 2021, we have projected just over $77 million in capital projects that need to be funded, mostly by 20% is development charges, 19% is reserves, 12% is grants and donations, 6% is the tax levy, and 2% is water and sewer rates. And then the big one is borrowing, which would accumulate to 41%. So those are the projected funding sources. And that does not include our debt for what may come from the long-term borrowing for the sewage treatment plant. And that is the 5-year capital plan. So at this time, staff are not, we're not asking council to adopt this plan tonight by any means. We are just recommending that you receive the report for now. And until we've determined whether the 2022 budget is going to have any changes to the capital side. There's no sense adopting this capital plan until the 2022 budget is also adopted, and so that any changes can be incorporated into this before changing it. So we will bring this back to council again in the new year. And then something to also just to point out is that even though you adopt a 5-year capital plan, you still will annually adopt an operating and capital budget for tax rate purposes. So something else that, as you notice through the process of 2021 and what was supposed to happen and what didn't happen, staff balance these capital projects at the end of each year by using reserves that are available to fund any overages or any budgeted costs that were collected by tax dollars are put into a reserve at the end of the year if that project is not done, so that in the following year, for example, we did purchase a truck in 2021. We have not taken delivery of it. It will not come until 2022, but we've collected that money from the tax base in this calendar year. So we need to set that money aside so that when the truck does come, we have the reserves to pay for it. So in addition to adopting a motion to receive this capital plan is also the annual motion that I always get from council before the end of the year, authorizing staff to transfer to and from reserves to close finished projects and to set aside any unspent funds to complete other projects in the future. And normally that motion would have been included with my third quarter report, but I neglected to include it in that motion. So I've stuck it into this one because this is the last meeting of the year. And that is the end of the capital plan.
All right, any questions on the capital plan? Okay, can I get a motion then to receive that, and as Carrie said, to authorize the treasurer to transfer to and from reserves as necessary at year end in order to close finished projects and to set aside any unspent funds to complete unfinished 2021 projects next year. Moved by Councillor Donato, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. All in favor? It's carried. And then to backtrack slightly, can I get a motion to receive the draft 2022 budget presentation that Carrie made originally? Moved by Councillor Buffett, seconded by Councillor Wagner. All in favor? It's carried as well. Okay. Any councillor inquiries before we get into budget discussions? Deputy Mayor Anderson.
So at the risk of embarrassing our mayor, I'm just going to come out and use this opportunity. He probably knows what's coming, to congratulate him publicly, especially the person.
I shouldn't have asked if there were any inquiries.
Well, you knew this was coming, Wade. You should have known that. But to congratulate him on becoming the 145th warden of the county. And I just think not only is it a tremendous accomplishment for Wade, certainly his family, but it's a tremendous accomplishment for the town of Shelburne. And many of you will know that one of the, I think, ask of the community was that we have stronger representation at the county level. And I just think Wade's election and the confidence that has been shown in his leadership already is a clear answer that representation, that strong representation is there. So again, Wade, congratulations. And I know that the great work that you're doing here will continue to extend at the county level in your new position.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Wagner.
Yes, thank you very much. Congratulations, of course. Just a quick question, I guess, to maybe, I don't know if it would be Jim or not, but just wondering, at Jack Darling Park, is that all the Christmas lights that we currently have in possession for the town? Just, I would love to see more. So I wasn't sure if we've put out kind of everything that we actually currently own, and maybe this is something, moving forward with budget talks that we need to also kind of have a discussion about. We're going to be putting money into revitalizing the Jack Dowling Park, and I just think it would be wonderful that, if we could have a bit larger of a light display there, which would maybe, entice families to come down and take photos and whatnot. So yeah, just wondering if that's all we have.
We did keep some lights for the parade for the equipment, so we could light them up. So I will check with staff as soon as I'm back from vacation. I'm actually off just back tonight, sort of thing. So, but I'll double check with them and see what else we do have. We do have some that we did use for the parade equipment as well. So,
Okay.
Councilor Bernardo.
Gotta find that unmute button there. So, with the mild weather we're having this week, this is a question for Jim, and I know I've asked it in the past, and I'll ask it again. Are we still doing leaf collection? Because I know on Old Village Lane, we have leaves, they're cluttering even the manholes, and all up and around that northern end of the town there where I live, by the arena, that whole section, there's leaves on the street sides, and again, cluttering up manholes, water. Snow collection. I don't want to see the streets flooded.
staff did do a number of different circulations this year in different phases for the town, and broke that out. Did a number of repeats. We did get caught by some early weather there again before everything was tidied up. I do believe they are still trying to collect some of that. I know they were picking up after issues on the weekend there with high winds and limbs down and other things as well. But I believe that is their intention to get as much of that as they can, so it's not pushed back up onto lawns and plugging up storm drains. So.
Yeah, unfortunately in this area, that's what it's doing. As well as when you're walking on the sidewalks, there are broken branches and whatnot within the area, which I unfortunately have to keep pushing aside as I'm walking through. So I'm just wondering, and like I said, with the mild weather this week, if that was something that was happening.
I did talk to the staff today. I know they are working away on the limbs and that. We also have had to get a contractor in to deal with limbs that are hung up in trees that are overhanging roads, streets as well, to get some of those down. So they are working on it diligently this week. So.
Okay. Any other inquiries? Okay. So the next item on the agenda is 2022 budget discussions. As I said on November 29th, certainly we'll get through as much as we can tonight. If necessary, I think we've done a bit of a poll, and everybody's free next Monday night if needed to reconvene and continue these discussions. I would like to stay on track, certainly in terms of presenting the draft budget to the public on January 10th. But let's see how far we get tonight, and if we need more time, then we'll use next Monday. I don't want anybody to feel rushed or feel as though we're not giving this the kind of credit that is due. But in any event, we'll see how far we get tonight. Before we jump right into those discussions, though, there are a couple of matters that I would like to discuss in camera related to budget discussion specifically. So I am going to make a motion under subsection subsections under 8.2 B and H of the Municipal Act to discuss personal matters about identifiable individuals, as well as information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality by Canada, a province, or a territory or a crown agency thereof. Can I get a seconder for that motion to move in camera? Councillor Hall. All in favor?